Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge, or in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Well, hello and welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. I just got done recording with Andrea Jones. I gotta say, I could have probably gone on for a whole nother hour with just picking her mind and getting her insight and just delving into her experience as a mom with a special needs child. I had to cut myself off because I am trying to get these episodes done to be a little bit shorter. I'm working on it, guys. Andrea is a mom of 2 girls, one of which has special needs. She's a wife. She's a nurse. She's also the CEO of her own company, Abundant Wellness with Andrea. She spent over 10 years working in a busy inner city hospital, working with children of nearly every diagnosis and complexity. Her own experience with hormone imbalances led her to pursue additional training and expertise so that she could do what she really loved. Help busy women get rid of their painful periods, mood swings, irritability, and fatigue so that they can get back to feeling their best again. And now moms. And how hard is it to show up for our kids when we don't feel good? I absolutely love the mission behind what Andrea is doing. And we didn't talk a lot about that specifically today. You will be able to go reach her if you are like, oh my gosh, I have to have that, which I bet you are. We talked a lot about her, of course, her journey into special momhood, her unique perspective of it. And she has a hot handful of brilliant insights. I had to interrupt her like 5 times because I was like, wait, gotta say that again. We have to like get clear about what it is that you were able to do in those moments that is truly profound. I know you're going to love the conversation. Let's get right to it. Andrea, welcome to the show. I am so excited for this conversation. I feel like there is just so much I'm interested to learn about your experience, about your journey, and I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel very blessed to be here, but just equally blessed to have found your podcast. I feel like it helped me to feel seen and known and understood in a way that I didn't know that I needed, if that makes sense. Just giving a voice to journeys that are a little bit different in parenthood and in motherhood, and giving the freedom to talk about some of the things that maybe we can't talk about in mommy play groups,
Or we can, but we're just kind of like, I don't know if they totally understand. Or maybe
Right.
a lot of times I've experienced, I don't feel like they're really listening.
Yes,
Because
that's
maybe
it.
I think there's just like no place to go in the brain if you
Yeah,
haven't experienced some of what we have.
absolutely. That's it. That's it exactly. So I just want to thank you for that and for giving room for some of those conversations to happen.
Well, you're welcome. And it's absolutely my pleasure. Tell us a little bit about how you became a special needs mom, a little bit of what your life picture looks like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we can all say that we never pictured this being a part of our story. I think that that is something that life does not prepare you for. Now, I will say that my experience as a pediatric nurse, I did work with a lot of special needs families, a lot of chronic families. And so I do think that experience did allow me to have a lot of empathy and compassion and really be in that world, but it was still very much other. Like, that's their journey. It won't touch me. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? I can
Yeah,
still
I
go
can
home to
relate
my
that.
life.
I think when we first got our diagnosis, it was very much an experience of, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. Like
Yeah.
I'm the one now in this thing that I always thought was this other and this extraordinary. It
Yeah,
really
or
was
that
wild.
somehow you can prevent that from happening to you,
Yeah.
even when you know you can't. Like, because of because of working with special needs families, like, there are genetic things that happen. There are all these different variables that are totally outside of our control. And so I just never, it's not like you take a parenting class. It's like, and by the way, if you have special needs kids, this is what you should probably develop in yourself. I didn't have I didn't have that. And so Alexis, my oldest, and she and I were actually talking about this podcast today, and she's like, Mom, I want them to know everything. I want moms to know that this doesn't have to happen to them and their kids can get better.
Wow.
And
How old is she?
she will be 10 in 2 weeks.
Okay. Wow. What perspective for a 10-year-old?
Yeah, she's brilliant. Like, she really is amazing. And but I feel like, this being part of her story and something that's going to be out for the world to hear, I wanted to know like what she's comfortable with me
Yeah.
getting into. She was totally neurotypical. I mean, developing normally, happiest kid ever, like amazing sleeper, amazing disposition, super creative. And then when she turned 5, so I had Olivia, and they're about 4.5-ish years apart. And at her 5, she got her 5-year shots, just her boosters, like she normally would. And I didn't totally put these two pieces together until later, because I was still in that like baby brain fog. I'm exhausted. I'm not
Because you have like
sleeping.
a 6-month-old, it sounds like at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I'm like, you're doing the best you can, but you're kind of exhausted. So
Yeah. Just one foot
um
after another.
right, but I noticed that she stopped making eye contact with me, and she could no longer like follow a conversation, to whereas before, very articulate, very understanding, she could extrapolate pretty, complex thought processes, through conversation, and give her thoughts to them. And she could no longer do that anymore. A lot of hyperactivity was like, we were starting to see an increase in that, and a lot of food allergies that she had not had previously. And so I, again, did not connect the timeline on that, and was starting to kind of look into, okay, what do we need to do? Do we need to get an evaluation? Is this sensory processing? Is this like, what are we looking at? Because then we had, friends and family that were like, oh, she's just busy. She's just hyper.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, I know my kid. She used to be able to look me in the face and be able to track with me and follow a conversation. And now I can't get her to make eye contact. Like I know my kid, and I know that we talked about this.
Yeah.
So I might let you jump in here and share your little.
Yeah. Well, Andrea and I were talking offline, and we talked about, so she's a nurse, and I think she has a really unique perspective because she is caring for in pediatrics specifically. So she's caring for patients from the perspective of her expertise, which is nursing. And I just shared a personal experience about how one of the inpatient experiences that we had with Levi, where the nurse was planning to administer some medication that was per prescription, per doctor's orders, but as she administered it, it would have been, I don't want to say like critical, but it would not have been helpful to my son who was already in hospital.
Yeah.
And because she was willing to have this dialogue with us and kind of allow us to be the experts as the parent, she was able to we were able to advocate and say, oh no, we actually need to hold this medication. I know the doctor said this, but this is how it really works. And she just this particular nurse took a moment to give us kind of the rah-rah of saying, you guys are the best advocate for your children that will ever be.
Right.
Yes, doctors and nurses, like they have their training, they have their perspective, but you guys know him so much better. And it's so important that you speak up for him.
Absolutely. And I think that's, and this is like, we're not debating the rights and wrongs or merits of vaccination or not vaccinating. It's just that inner mom knowing that something is not right with your child. And it, and even my husband, and he's totally okay with me sharing this, was like, oh, she's fine, but he was also gone like 50 hours a week. So he didn't necessarily see even what I was seeing. And so we're in this process. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah. I was just going to pause you for a second, just to kind of speak to that inner knowing, because it is different than advocating like, oh, like don't give him that medication. Because my experience as well was when my son Levi was 12 months. So he was diagnosed at 2 years and 3 months, which is however many months. But at 12 months, I remember very specifically at his appointment telling the doctor, hey, I'm a little bit concerned. Like he's been progressing really well.
Yeah.
And then I've just seen where it's like plateaued. And because he was my second, I was like, I kind of just felt like he should have been walking by now based on what he was doing at 11 months.
Right.
I don't know why he's not walking at this point. And I remember I went and bought him shoes. I was like, he's going to be walking any day. And then he just didn't, which was, it's so subtle. Right. And I think that's the thing about the inner knowing. And at that point, I brought it to the doctor. She put all of his stats into her computer. And essentially he was still on all the charts. So for her, he was okay. He fell into the charts, which again, like she was just doing the best job that she could, but she didn't know my child.
Yeah.
And I look back at that and I don't beat myself up, but I do take it as a lesson to say, hey, like you knew, like your little mommy sense knew something might have been not quite right.
Right.
And it is hard to realize, like, maybe if I did speak up, like maybe he would have not lost vision in his eye. I don't know. And so it's one of those things like I can't go back in time. I'm not going to beat myself up, but I am going to use it to really remember
that feeling.
Always, that little feeling that's it, because it's usually very, very subtle.
And it was very much like, I started questioning like, okay, if this is like, first of all, we didn't have a diagnosis or anything. And nobody's really willing to look at a diagnosis again, because she fits on all the charts and she's not falling behind in school and whatever. And I'm like, yes, but like, this is not my kid, and she's gone from, pretty happy, like easy disposition, very creative, very busy, but happy, to irritable a lot. And so I started looking into eliminating food triggers, and that definitely did help with some of the behavior that we were seeing and some of the hyperactivity. So we're on this journey of trying to uncover what's going on, but not really fully knowing. And it's still kind of being in the range of normal, but still that kind of gut sense is happening. That rub is happening. So not having any answers. And then she got strep. And our whole world flipped upside down. So what we had seen this kind of peak in symptoms, hyperactivity, loss of focus, not being able to pay attention, look you in the eye. And we're starting to see some mild improvements with the changes that we'd been making at home. And then the strep happened. All the progress that we had made flew out the window, and she began having, rage meltdowns. And I'm talking about, when people say, oh, my kid has tantrums too, it is not the same. And I'm not discrediting how stressful it is to have kids with any spectrum of tantrums.
Yes.
But I'm just saying it's not the same. And I can say that because I have a neurotypical kid. So there is understanding that difference. And again, not discounting the fact that tantrums suck altogether.
Yes.
They're hard regardless.
Screaming is screaming. And it always is hard to prolong.
It is always hard. And yeah, I mean, it feels the same to your body as a mom, regardless of whether it's a 2-year-old screaming for Cheerios or a 7-year-old pounding on the door, screaming at you until she's sweating and crying and her pupils are dilated all the time. And, everything is now like sensory explosion. Like, she can't handle socks on her feet. She can't handle the way her clothes feel on her body, the sound, sounds, sights, smells, all of those things are triggering her. And I knew something, like at that point, I knew it was PANDAS.
What is PANDAS?
Yeah. So really good question. So PANDAS is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with streptococcus. Now,
That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. So
I see why we use PANDAS now.
Yeah, that's why we call it PANDAS. Now, PANDAS and PANS, which is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric, basically associated with any virus or infection. So that can be like Lyme disease, mold, mycoplasma. There's like a whole subset there. But essentially, if we were to like nutshell that, it's an infection that triggers neurological changes. So for my child, that was rage, sensory, like major sensory issues. Basically, her brain was on fire, if you think about it that way. So those antibodies that your body makes to kill strep, actually, for a kiddo with PANDAS, actually begin to attack their amygdala, their fight or flight. So now they're in fight or flight all of the time. And I knew, like, I just based on my training, I was
going to ask, did you know what this was prior to her experiencing this?
I did, but I'd maybe only seen 1 or 2 patients in the hospital. Now I understand why, because most clinicians will not diagnose it unless they're a specialist. So, and there are not it's really hard to find a specialist.
What do you think most kids get maybe misdiagnosed with if they actually have PANDAS? What do people think it is instead?
OCD, anxiety, emotional regulation disorder, oppositional defiance disorder. I mean, there's a list of So if you're a parent and you're seeing like my kid got this infection and they were progressively worse or like immediately worse, I would automatically begin looking into like, let's look, we got to make sure we're covering our bases here. Like, was there an infectious trigger?
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's highly misdiagnosed. And I got lucky. I found a physician and I did not say that's what it was because I wanted just to kind of hear and see what he said. And he's like, I am like 99.9% sure this is PANDAS. And I just like cry. I mean, because I knew what the trajectory looked like and I knew how hard this was going to be. And I think it just kind of hit me in that moment of, God, what are we in for?
How long? So she was at what age when she was diagnosed?
She was 7. I'm trying to
about 2 years from when you start seeing symptoms differences.
Yeah.
2 years to actually understanding what it was.
Yeah. Well, so she had the sensory stuff after her 5-year shots, and then she got strep when she was 7. And then it was about 3 weeks later that like we'd killed the infection. I knew like the strep throat was gone, like no fever, no, like all that's good. We did antibiotics, all that stuff. And then I was like, this is not like my kid is not the same. And I was starting to get really scared, honestly, because I knew the longer we waited, the worse this was going to be for her little brain. The first doctor that I went to was like, oh, no, she just has a sensitive nervous system. And I'm like, well, okay, but why? Like, like,
Cool.
yeah,
That doesn't
thank
help
you
us
for that
know.
very helpful information. And so I think the important thing to understand about PANDAS is it's not a diagnosis that you can make off of lab testing, like something like cancer or other, genetic diseases. Yes, we can look at their strep antibodies, and if their strep antibodies are really high, that's an indicator of PANDAS, but it's a clinical diagnosis based on their symptoms.
Mhm.
So that's where you really have to have a practitioner who's really comfortable with saying, I know what this is. I know what this looks like based on their history and their timeline. We need to treat her for this.
And do you think you just got lucky getting to that practitioner, or do you feel like because of what you knew as a nurse, you were able to seek that out?
Well, I think I would have eventually sought it out, but in this case, I honestly feel like it was divine intervention
Yeah.
because I was at, like, I don't remember if I put this in the notes, but I was actually at a vendor event for oils.
Mhm.
And this guy just comes up to my table and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a pediatric doctor. I work with kids who have behavioral issues." And my jaw just like
Wow.
fell, and I made an appointment, got her in the next day, and he looked over. I mean, he's like, "We're going to order a crap ton of labs. Like, we're going to do all our due diligence, but this is my gut feeling. We need to get her treated right away. She's not okay."
That is a
And
very amazing divine intervention story.
absolutely. And so to me, that's undeniable. Like, I couldn't
Yeah.
have set that up. I would have kept searching, and I would have, I was already looking for neurologists. But here's the thing, they have wait lists that are 18 to 20 months long.
Yeah.
So if you have a kid who is acutely ill and regressing daily, like she was no longer able to sleep at night, couldn't sleep by herself, couldn't be upstairs by herself. She was having tremendous anxiety. This is why she would rage when I would go to the bathroom, because closing the door, I just wanted to pee and like
Yeah.
maybe cry a little bit by myself. And for her, that was like her little nervous system couldn't handle it. And so she ended up sleeping in our room for a year on a cot because we have this tiny little bed. So
Mhm.
couldn't fit like three medium-sized humans on there. But it was very scary. It was very scary. And I mean, there's a lot still I think I haven't totally processed about that time because you're just in it,
Yeah.
you're just getting through the day.
Yeah, and I do think that, well, I mean, we've talked about this on several episodes, but the evolving grief of
Mhm.
being a mom, because, and I think I realized after talking to enough moms, of course the grief continues to evolve, because as kids are quote unquote supposed to meet different milestones and they're
Yes.
not, as a mom, I think it continues to confront us with the grief of what we thought was going to be, and it's not.
Absolutely.
And so anyhow, so I think also then looking back, like going back into the place of that when you were just surviving to touch, I know for myself, touching myself with so much compassion for
Absolutely.
who I was at the time of his diagnosis, not having any of the skills really that I think I needed,
Right.
but surviving yet.
Yeah,
And then actually, being able to gather those skills and perspective along the way, but it
absolutely.
looked pretty bad at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you're doing the best you can. You know what I mean? So it's, and you're triaging essentially, like you're triaging needs, you're triaging your own needs, and you're kind of rationing what you have amongst your other family members. And, now we're in a much better, much different place. Thankfully to some really amazing practitioners, but we're not fully out of the woods yet. I would say she's probably like 85% recovered,
Mhm.
which is really good progress for the timeline. When we're looking at a timeline, it could have been much, much worse. But yeah, there's still that, that the processing of, like, my youngest is now, and I might get a little bit emotional about this, but she's Alexis's age when she got sick.
Mhm.
And so now I'm seeing things that I didn't get to experience with Alexis, like in
Mhm.
my face.
Mhm.
And I love it and I hate it at the same
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
because it's a gift and it hurts. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Like
it does.
it's a gift and it's also painful. And so I think just, for moms out there that are in that process, wherever you are, to allow yourself to feel both, because you can, like, now I'm sitting in both gratitude and grief. Like I even in this moment, like thinking about the progress Alexis has made, and yet still feeling that I didn't get to have this with her. I didn't, not even the parenting experiences where, I could have parented her differently had those other things not been happening. But instead, I was having to manage rage on a daily basis. And that's traumatizing, not only to her, but to the caregiver. And
to everybody that in that household that experiences the impact of that rage. Yeah, that's something that we deal with as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So you're, I want to get I guess I want to just kind of dig in a little bit deeper on the experience of having grief and whatever accompanying feeling that's kind of the contrast of that. Maybe not exactly the contrast, but I guess something I wanted to kind of ask you about starts with a little story of my experience.
Go for it.
And over the weekend, I'm trying to remember how this actually got queued up. Oh, I know. My husband took my son to church because we just felt like he needed to actually, like, Levi is a very highly social person. He's not, he doesn't really do play dates like with some of my other kids do. Yeah. And with being at home for learning, we felt like, let's get this boy out into the world in a safe way. Right. And so my husband took him to church. And so that left me and the 3 other kids home in the morning on Sunday. And so we have a new puppy. So we're like, let's go. And then we have these beautiful hills behind our house. And so I got all the kids ready, and oh my gosh, that was a whole struggle in itself. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're just literally trying to like walk out the door. Like we don't need anything.
Why is it so hard?
Why is it so hard? So we got everybody out, and and I was kind of like, let's go just for a walk, you guys. Let's go. I want to go look at the view. It's a clear day, and like we're going to get to see the islands. It's just, we get to see Catalina from our house, and it's gorgeous. And so let's go out. Honestly, we just had a magical time. It was a beautiful day. Amazingly, I can't say that miraculous word very well, but there was no complaining. There was just, I think, the experience of, wow, this is amazing to be outside together.
Yeah.
And I didn't speak it to my kids, but I do know that there was some element of enjoying not being together with Levi, because if we were to try to do that with him, there would be a lot of complaining. There would be, we would have to accommodate our speed to make sure it matched his ability. Yeah. It's this thing where I loved the time with my other kids. It was so much fun, but I also grieve that we can't do it together. Yeah. And I don't have necessarily an answer. I guess I'm just processing this. And it sounds like, and I wanted to share this because I think this is something that probably a lot of us moms are dealing with. Absolutely. And I think by nature, I happen to be more of a herder type mom, or like if I was a dog, I'd be like with the kind that herds.
A healer.
Yes, a healer.
Yeah.
Heeler.
Yeah.
And so I think it's confronting for me to not have my little pack together. Yeah. I guess I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that. Just hear more about how you experience this part of being a mom to children that have such different experiences.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it there. It's hard when those feelings come up, because it can trigger guilt in a way of like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way.
I shouldn't be so happy to not have them with me.
But I think if we're honest, just moms that I've been talking to, even not special needs moms who have been stuck at home with COVID and their kids are driving them absolutely nuts. It's like they're feeling some of that too, and it's like we just need to apply that to a different, like maybe more extreme situation, which is that we don't get to leave when COVID's over. Like this doesn't go away. When COVID is over, like maybe that situation will. And so for me, like it's a little bit of that guilt of like, I miss having my kid in school because at least I got a break from the meltdowns.
Totally. I talked to a lot of moms that are at that place of like, I need them to go to school.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, I think I'm at a place now where I don't really feel guilt about that because I recognize that it's beneficial for her too. Like she enjoys it, she loves it, and she thrives there. And our relationship is way better. Like when we have some breaks. And so this, COVID situation, and I think you were talking about it with Dana. Is it Dana? I think you guys talked a little bit about this. Is it
I'm trying to
Diane?
remember. Say again. Keep going.
Dana. Anyways, okay. So she was talking about COVID and having the kids home all the time.
Donna.
Donna. Okay. I'm sorry, Donna.
That's okay. The Tim and Donna. She
okay.
has COVID right now, actually.
Oh no.
Yeah, but
no.
she's doing good so far.
Good.
Doing well.
Okay.
Let's use
But no, I really resonated with that when she was sharing that about like, my kids are driving me crazy and they are going crazy because they're stuck at home and this is just not good. Like when you already have a kiddo who's struggling. Now, for us, it's actually been good in a lot of ways, but it's a mixed bag. One, because Alexis has not been as exposed to auto or immune system triggers. So being exposed to kids with germs, she's been able to go at her own pace more with school. So if she's in a flare and we're starting to see some of those symptoms kind of creep back in, which they do when kiddos with PANDAS get sick, it will still trigger that same autoimmune response or that same neurological response. We can just say, we're done with school today. We're not doing school today. Like it's going to be a break day. We're going to watch informative YouTube videos and all day.
I like that spin on instead of calling it bribing, I call it incentivizing.
Yes. That's a good word. I like that.
Yes.
So, but with that, I mean, it's still a mixed bag because I feel that like maybe I'm not providing her the education that she needs. It's like there's guilt no matter where you go because there's no perfect or ideal way to do it right now. And I think that's why so many moms are struggling. And then you add the whole special needs component on top of that with appointments and therapies and trying to keep them up on all the things. And it's just like, if you could have captured my face on that side.
Just breathe. All we need to do is breathe.
Yes. It's like, we got to cut ourselves some slack because this is hard. Like,
it's interesting when you said there's no perfect way to do this. And it struck me because I think in working with a lot of people, and I know for myself, we have a desire to get things right. We may it doesn't have to be perfect, flawless, but we do want to get it right.
Right.
And when we're doing this thing called distance learning, and even just this last year, that none of us have ever done before, and there literally is no right way to do it.
Right.
I think it puts us at this place of like dancing with this impossibility because there's no way to get it right. And so it's very confronting for us. And we intellectually know that there's no way to get it right or perfect, but yet from a default, from a kind of a less conscious way of being, we still try.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it comes from a good place. Like I was talking to my counselor a couple weeks ago, which, hey, go get counseling if you need it. It's awesome. There's no shame in it, She was talking about how like we were talking about a bad moment in parenting that I was really working through some guilt on. And she said, but let's peel that back a little bit because we know that wasn't an ideal response for you. But where was it coming from? And I was like, what kind of a weird question is that? Like, I was mad, She's like, but you were mad because you wanted to provide a better experience for your daughter. And that is good. And she was like, I want you to see when you fail, quote unquote, as a mom, when you feel like you've missed it, look, like peel behind the emotion and look at what was going on in your heart that was good. Because for you, it's, for me, it's always like I'm motivated by those core beliefs or those core heart motivators towards my children. Yes, I missed the mark. We all do because we're human. But that really shifted something for me and really caused me to kind of confront some of those ideals in my head about getting it right. Like what is right?
Yeah. It sounds like for you, it allowed you to put the filter on of acknowledging that you're getting it right from the big perspective of like my heart and my intention is in the right space.
Yes.
And actually giving yourself the gift of like knowing that like that's settled. Like you don't have to question that.
Right.
And then when you look at this action or like what actually happened as far as your bad parenting moment, it It doesn't have to be such it's not an issue. It's not a problem. It's
Right.
just an opportunity to like, oh, okay, well, there's a disconnect from like actually my true intention and how I acted, what was going on.
Exactly. And then looking at that and saying, okay, I could partner with shame and go down, which is only going to trigger more bad behavior because then I'm going to pop back into perfectionism, which is
Yeah.
what I do. Or I could say, this is a brilliant opportunity for me to show my kids what it looks like to be human and make a mistake and own it and apologize and say, like, even give them a peek into our heart, because sometimes they're like, I don't know why she just snapped at me, or why did she yell about the raisin toast? I mean, like, like those ridiculous things.
Totally.
But give them a peek into, like, I was sad because I really wanted today to be a good day for Alexis, and she's having a really hard day.
Yeah.
And it came out as snappiness because I'm sad.
Yeah.
And are you feeling sad too?
And learning for us, like this is something I'll just pipe in here.
Yeah, I love it.
That when we haven't processed our own emotion, when we're bottling it up, it literally is like trying to like keep a beach ball under the water.
Yeah.
And we haven't processed and done our own work on the side. Then that's when we see us unleashing all of the energy about raisin toast.
Right?
Because because it's that beach ball surfacing. And we're like, because you look at these responses and you're like, this has no, like, this doesn't, like, you can go look back and you're like, this doesn't make total sense. Like, this was raisin toast and wow, that was a big response.
Yeah.
And that's when that's just kind of the like the white flag that gets raised of like, oh, we need to look at this over here. This is not expected behavior.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because that's specifically an area that I've been working on, in the sense of not going into shame over parenting mistakes, in part because of some of my childhood stuff, where I'm seeing some of the fruit of the sacrifice with Alexis. So she'll say, Mom, you did the best you could.
Oh my gosh.
And like, you can't control it sometimes. It's, you didn't sleep well. Like, she gets it because I've applied that grace to her. Like, she's doing the best she can. That has been my, like, retraining my brain. Like, she literally, it is, if we had to categorize this would be categorized as a brain injury. And so she literally cannot access the higher thinking skills that maybe another 10-year-old would. So she is literally doing the best she can. And so it's been really interesting. She's like, Mom, why are you sad? And I'm like, oh, I just feel bad about how I responded earlier. And we have opened, as open as you can be with a 10-year-old, and just how she's able to kind of fling that back and say, well, I'm upset. It didn't make me feel good, but I understand. And I know that you were doing the best you could. And I'm like, okay, I guess I did something right.
I think it's those little moments that feel like a win. We're not quite there yet in our case, as far as like being able to see that. But I know I teaching your child that skill when you haven't maybe been taught it as a child, I think it feels like one of the gifts of having these kids. Because we talked a little bit offline about maybe not having started our journey as a mother with some of these skills.
Yeah.
And you shared a little bit about how you have been raised by a mom, or had been raised by a mom who had mental illness. So for you, even coming into motherhood, tell us a little bit about where you like started in motherhood and what, like, both that experience and having the specific children that you have, how that has changed you.
Really, I feel like I could talk about this for a really long time. So I'm going to try to nutshell it. But yeah, so for me, I think I was operating under this mindset that I had a deficit because I did not have a mom who was overtly nurturing or kind. I mean, she did good things. There's been a lot of like discovery and reconciliation in my heart about that. So I see the good, but you can see the good and still acknowledge the pain, the reality of maybe what you did not get. And so when I had Alexis, she was my motivation. Like I'm going to heal from this. That was like my declaration to myself, and it's going to be for my children. And so whatever I have to do to become the mom that I need to be for this child. Now, I did not know I was going to have the added icing on the cake of like, yay, you get to deal with rage again, because that was one of my mom's big things. I mean, she would rage a lot. And so hugely, I mean, talk about triggering. Hello.
Yeah.
So for me, that was my starting point. Pretty much as soon as I got pregnant, I knew that stuff was going to come up with my mom that I was going to have to deal with. And I had no idea how I was going to deal with it. But I just decided I don't care if it's a lifelong journey. I'm going to do it. And so for me, I automatically felt like it's kind of like going into work without your, like, by the way, I left my stethoscope at home and I don't have any gloves or mask or like access to the supply closet. Like, there is no supply closet. Surprise. Good luck with your job. That's what it felt like. And
such a great picture.
Right. I was like, that just kind of came to me. So hopefully that works.
Good.
But realizing that I could get them, because there was definitely that feeling of hopelessness. Like, I look
Hold
at
up. Wait a minute. I just really want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
I think that's so brilliant. Showing up, literally realizing I don't have what I need.
Yeah.
Having the agency, like the ability to think that you can change something.
Right.
To think that you could get that. That is amazing. And I just really want people to hear that part of it. Like,
Yeah.
you knew that you didn't have it, but you also knew that you could get it.
Right.
And that is a critical difference, right? If you didn't have that, then that would lead to hopelessness.
Absolutely.
And that's for everybody that's feeling stuck or frustrated and just like, I can't get anywhere. Notice that you probably don't believe that you have the power to change anything.
That's it right there.
And here's the big difference where, like, I love that you highlighted this part of like how you were approaching it. It's so beautiful. And so keep going.
Yeah, no, that I love that you nailed that, because what you said about that was perfect. And so good. And I think there was just this like drive in me, that's like, I have to do this. Like, this is a non-negotiable. I will find it if it costs me my life. And so that's literally, and I think if you would talk to any of like my life coaches and mentors at the time, they would have been like, yep, she was texting me all day, every day. Like,
what did you think was going to be the consequence if you didn't get this?
That my children would suffer like I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that was not an option.
Mm-hmm.
It's still not an option.
Yeah.
So that was my why, was, for me to heal, and my children have healed me too, and I think that's the blessing of, even this journey with Alexis, where I'm like, had days where I'm like, why, God? Like, what I've been through, that rage is triggering to me. And of all the things like that could have happened in my life, this is the one thing. And I firmly believe personally, my own personal faith, that God doesn't cause suffering. Suffering happens because of humans and other things outside of our control. But I also firmly believe that God will use whatever happens in my life for good if I let him. And so he and I had to have some discussions, sometimes very heated and very resistant on my part.
Yes, I can relate to that.
I will use this for your good if you let me. And so now I'm having to face these, I've dealt with a ton of stuff with my mom, but the rage was one I don't know that I'd ever fully, because I wasn't having to experience it on a daily basis anymore. I got out. So here I am having a kid who I'm supposed to be protecting when they're raging, and I'm terrified. Like, I'm feeling all the same feelings of my 5-year-old self, and that's hard. Like, it's hard to stand in that place as a parent. And I have a lot of compassion for myself. I didn't and don't do it perfectly, but it also healed me.
Another second too, just to say, rage is hard in the sense of like, I experience this as well. Like, even yesterday, I was in the middle of finishing a meeting, and Levi came upstairs up into my room, aka office. He sat in the chair that sits next to my desk, and he wanted to connect. He said, "When are you going to be done?" And I said, "I'm going to be done in about, I don't know, half an hour." And he's like, "I just really want to connect." I was like, "I understand that, and I'm going to be done." And it was hard, like I had to finish this thing.
Yeah, right.
So he got upset, he left, and he is so strong, and so he slammed the door so hard, and like just that physical reaction, like, because I wasn't looking, and so it was just this boom behind me, right? So like, from a human standpoint, like, these are not easy things to be confronted. Or even as I watch my husband, or I would as I parent with my husband, I was upstairs the other day, and I hear, the things you hear when you're living with someone with rage, right. I think we all have rage, but with rage that is unleashed
Yeah.
regularly.
Mhm.
And what we constantly struggle with is trying to protect our things
Yeah.
as opposed to letting the rage hold out. And for me, it's felt better to me just to realize everything in my house is just a thing.
Yes.
And so I allow all the things, like all the things are getting broken. And that's just
Yeah.
something for me that I've just accepted.
Exactly. Yep.
But yet it's not easy because sometimes it gets you when you see someone like literally trying to destroy something with their
Mhm.
175-pound strong body. It gets you. And so anyhow, I
Yeah.
just wanted to pause and put that in about rage,
Yes.
especially because for you experienced the trauma of rage as a child, but I can't even imagine like what that was like. And then now you're being confronted with it again in this new role of parenting. So continue on.
Absolutely. No, and I think you nailed that. And I think for me, I was like, I cannot go into the victim mindset of this is going to destroy me. And this, you know what I mean? Like, cause I can go there. But I was like, I have overcome that. I'm not going there. So okay, God, like if this is where we're going, then you're going to have to bring the resources to heal me, because like keep in mind, we're spending all of our money trying to pull our child out of this hellhole so that our family can function again. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't an option for me to, like, I just had to pull on all of the skills I already had and try to basically like, um, I'm trying to think of the word, but like apply them now to
Yeah.
like a harder situation.
Yeah.
Meaning like,
You're up leveling your game
self-management.
real quick.
Say that again.
I
Sorry.
said you had to up level your game very quickly.
Yeah. And it was not easy. I mean, it still is not easy, but I think realizing like if I could do that, if I could face all the things that I faced before, I kind of had to pull on that positive. Like if I could face that, I can do this. I don't know how,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that I can, and I know that I will. And so it was once that switch flipped that I was like, okay, this is where we're going then. Like, I'm going to deal with the triggers. I now know what's happening in my body. Like, I understand why I'm having these responses. And for me, it was never, I shouldn't say never, very rarely like an external expression of what I was feeling
Mm-hmm.
when she would rage at me. It was an internal terror,
Totally. Oh, that's such
which is
a great
something
way
that
of describing
my
it. Yeah.
husband is very different. He was not traumatized as a child.
Yeah.
So for him, his looks like anger, and he'll get louder and more like trying to control the environment. Whereas me, I'm like, get me the HE double hockey sticks out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Like total different fight or flight response, right? But that's what it's like. And so for me, just acknowledging what my body needs in that moment. Like my body is still like, maybe she feels like an 8-year-old right now. And we're not talking about like dissociative identity, like there's no dissociation here, but I'm just saying,
Well, it's going back to those neural pathways that as an 8-year-old were formed, that
right,
when this happens, you respond this way to keep yourself safe. Like it's
exactly.
just that practiced way of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And so giving myself that compassion to say, what does she need right now? Right now, she needs to feel safe. So maybe I'm going to move my body, or maybe I'm going to take a bath, or maybe I'm going to put on some headphones because homegirl is having a moment. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to do the things I can control instead of like focus on the thing I can't control. And it's a practice. I mean, there are days where it's like all those skills, like
I know.
I
It's one
lose
of those
them.
things where obviously as a coach, I talk about this all the time. And I want everybody to know, never think that means we all execute perfectly
Oh,
because it's a practice. Like, and it's not done perfectly.
no.
I want to hear a little bit about I love the question that you asked yourself, or the question you use to prompt yourself, like, what do I need right now? I think
Yeah.
that is one of the most powerful questions. And it sounds like that's a huge part of how you do meet yourself in these moments.
Yeah.
You've mentioned oils. I know that, well, we talked about this. Like
Yeah.
I was interested to hear a little bit about how specifically you have enjoyed the use of oils in your healing process and
Mm,
actually processing emotions. So tell me a
yeah.
little bit about that.
That's a good one. So obviously I will use them in the moment. Some of my favorites are Stress Away and Lavender, specifically because of what they do to your neurotransmitters. They actually help your brain to make dopamine and serotonin, which you need if you're hitting like fight or flight, you need those neurotransmitters. But they also reduce your cortisol. So it's that instant like helping your nervous system to just kind of come back down to earth. But specifically, and I actually use this process a lot with my clients, and it's called Aroma Freedom Technique. It is 5 different oils that you use specifically to target a specific emotion or a specific thought process. And so it's basically you're breathing the oils in. You're kind of asking yourself some questions like, what's the feeling in my body? What are the negative thoughts that are associated with that feeling? Are there any memories that come up? And it just kind of, it helps you to process really, really quickly. Very similar actually to EMDR. Because some of the principles were actually based off of the practice of EMDR. And so I use that a lot. Like I'm right now trying to block out 30 minutes out of my week where I'm doing an aroma freedom session for myself. That's my aroma freedom time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to allow myself to process my feelings. Is there any stress being stored in my body? Anything from this week that I need to let go of? That kind of a thing. I don't always do it, but that's my goal.
No, I hear you. I just wanted to point out for anybody that is not familiar with EMDR, it stands for eye movement something. Do you know what that DR is? Desensitization?
Desensitization response?
Something like that. I'm obviously not a therapist, but I just wanted to point that out. But it's this fascinating modality that therapists that are trained in use to kind of access different parts of the brain to allow you to process emotions in a way that allows you to be with the trauma or the impact of it in a new way and like take away the power of it. Anyhow, and so I want to point that out because this sounds fascinating, the aroma freedom technique. If people want more information about that, how can they find it?
Yeah. So they can go to my website. It's www.abundantwellnesswithandrea.com. Or you can shoot me an email at andrea@abundantwellnesswithandrea.com. But you can find there's a ton of testimonials on my website. There's a little video that you can watch about it, some information about how it works. All of that's on there. But yeah, that either of those ways would be great.
It sounds like it's a beautiful culmination of who you are as a nurse, like from a Western medicine perspective, science perspective, bringing in the oils, which is kind of bringing in this beautiful, what God's given us through nature.
Yeah.
But then also, like the allowing the processing of emotions from a intentional standpoint. And
yes,
amazing. I was like, I'm asking for everybody, but I'm also asking for myself in the sense of adding oils to me just feels like adding a little other layer of intention.
Yeah, exactly.
Feels like it would be nourishing. It would be a loving way to meet myself. And
exactly. And it's simple.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like having to schedule a spa appointment. I mean, literally, like, I'm just like, okay, just going to sit here and breathe it in. And when my daughter is not doing, she hates it when I do that. It's not funny. She gets so mad at me though, because she's like, you're not partnering with my rage. And I'm like, I'm going to calm myself down first. I tell her what I'm doing. This hasn't happened in a long time, but when she was really sick, she couldn't handle like me stopping and like, doing some bilateral stimulation or using oils for that process. But it is a great way to, like, in the moment, 20 seconds, help your body to get shifted into a better, healthier state.
Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing with that. And for anybody that does want to follow up with Andrea, she mentioned her contact information. I will put everything in the show notes so that you can easily access her.
Awesome.
And we are out of time. I'm so sad. I feel like I can continue going on.
I know. Me too. This was so fun.
On our time. And do you have any last closing comments as we wrap up today's conversation?
Yeah, I think I would just say to moms out there, don't give up hope. And it's okay to embrace a life that's different. You will get to a place where you can find where it feels good again. It just maybe isn't right now, but you will get there. And there is hope and there is help out there. It might not be in your mom friend circle, but there are other moms who will get you, and it doesn't have to be a bad story.
And I want to add that it doesn't also have to be far away. That
Yes.
Today, but it also doesn't mean that it's really, really far away.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your beauty today and your sharing your experience so powerfully and vulnerably with us today.
Thank you.
I just really, really appreciate who you are to this community and
thank you.
the time you took today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real gift to get to be on here with you and hear from you as well. Thank you.
Hey there, moms. Before we totally wrap up this episode, I wanted to put one last thing in there. Whether you're coming to this conversation with a non-neurotypical child like Andrea, or whether you have a child like me who's punching holes in the walls and creating all sorts of chaos, I know you're still probably feeling all the feelings that we special needs moms feel often. Maybe it's feeling alone, like nobody understands. Maybe it's like I talked about in the episode, feeling so stuck or frustrated. I can totally relate to this. Or maybe you're at the point where you're starting to really resent and have a hard time loving your child in a way that makes you feel good because you think, if only they were different, then I could have the life that I want. And as a coach, I've studied and created a process that will help you regain control of your life, give you hope and peace. I have this special offer for my listeners. It's called the Path to Peace process. It's a one-on-one complimentary session, and it's an hour-long life-changing conversation that will give you the opportunity to see what's been opposing your peace all along. And my promise to you is that you will leave the conversation feeling more able, more in control, more able to get out of this stuck place that you are in now. All you have to do is click on the show notes for this episode. You'll see a link to contact me, and easy peasy, we will schedule from there. I cannot wait to hear from you. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.